It had been years since we last saw each other, 10 maybe more. I still remember the way he used to laugh, that loud, effortless sound that filled every corner of our childhood. Back then, we were inseparable. He was the kind of boy who didn't care about what others thought, always pulling me into his chaos, making me feel alive. But life happened. High school ended. He moved to another city. I stayed behind. We drifted. Our lives stretched in opposite directions like branches that once grew side by side but got caught in different winds. And then, out of nowhere, he messaged me. Just one line. "Hey, I'll be in your city for a day. Can we catch up?" My heart stumbled a bit when I read it. I typed back, "Sure," almost too quickly. I didn't know why I felt nervous. Maybe it was because part of me never really let go of him. Maybe it was because I was gay now, openly, and he wasn't. Or maybe it was just a simple, stupid hope that something might still be there, hidden beneath old memories that we met at the train station. I almost didn't recognize him. He had a beard now, slightly messy hair, taller than I remembered. But his eyes, those soft brown eyes that once watched stars with me from the school rooftop, were exactly the same. He smiled first. That same crooked grin that made me forget how to breathe. We hugged. It was warm. Familiar. And still, there was this strange energy, like unfinished sentences and unsaid feelings hanging between us. We walked for hours, catching up. He told me about his job, his apartment, how he broke up with a girl a few months back. I listened, nodding, pretending I wasn't watching the way his lips moved or how his hand brushed mine once, just once, as we walked side by side. He didn't mention any guys. I didn't ask. But inside, I was battling the old feelings. And the new ones too. It was supposed to be a quick meetup before he caught his late-night train. That's all. But things didn't go as planned. Around 11 p.m., the announcement came. His train was cancelled, track issue, rescheduled for early morning. He looked at me, half laughing. "Guess I'm homeless for the night." I shrugged, trying to stay cool. "Crash at my place. Couch is free." He didn't hesitate. "Thanks, man." I tried not to read into it. Tried to remind myself that he was straight. Tried to believe this was just two friends reconnecting. But something in my chest whispered otherwise. The apartment was quiet when we got in. I offered him water, food, anything to keep the moment normal. We talked more, about dumb memories, about high school crushes, about how we both grew up too fast. He asked me if I was seeing anyone. I paused. "Nah, not right now." He nodded like that answer meant more than I'd intended. Midnight crept in. I gave him a blanket, tossed it onto the couch. "Let me know if you need anything." He looked at the couch, then at me. "Actually, your bed's big, right? Like old times?" My heart skipped. I laughed to hide the tremble in my voice. "Yeah, sure." We lay side by side. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of him under the blanket. Close enough that I was wide awake, every nerve on edge. He sighed softly. "Remember that night we snuck out to watch the meteor shower?" I smiled in the dark. "You brought chips, I brought hot chocolate." He chuckled. "We almost got caught by your mom." A pause. "That was a good night." I turned slightly toward him. "One of the best." Silence hung heavy, like the air before a storm. Then his voice, barely above a whisper, broke it. "I miss this. Miss you." I stared at the ceiling, heart thudding in my chest. "Me too." Another silence. But this time it felt different. Charged. Like the space between us had shrunk without either of us moving. Like the things we weren't saying had finally found a voice in the dark. He didn't say anything else. Neither did I. But sleep didn't come easy that night. Not with his breath so close. Not with every memory flooding back, mixing with hope, fear, and something dangerously close to longing. Morning light crept through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. I was awake long before the sun, lying still, afraid to move. He was right there beside me, his breathing steady, his arms slightly brushing mine under the blanket. I don't know if it was intentional, but it felt like it. All night, I barely slept. Every time he shifted, I caught my breath. Every sigh, every murmur in his sleep, wrapped around my thoughts like a slow-burning flame. Now, in the quiet of dawn, I couldn't help but watch him. He looked peaceful, younger somehow, like the boy I used to know. I should have gotten up, made coffee, given him space. But I stayed, selfishly soaking in the moment, because I knew it would end the second he opened his eyes. And then, he did. Slowly. Like he was waking from a dream. His eyes met mine, and for a second, he didn't move. We just stared at each other. No words. No forced smiles. Just a long, quiet gaze that made my chest tighten. Then he blinked, rubbed his eyes, and shifted onto his back. "Morning," he mumbled. I nodded. "Morning." He stretched, yawned, then laughed softly. "Man, I forgot how weird it is to wake up next to someone." I tried to keep my voice steady. "We've done it before." He turned his head toward me, a lazy grin on his face. "Yeah, but not since we were kids. Back then, I didn't have to worry about morning breath." I smiled, but inside, everything twisted. He was making light of it, brushing off the weight of last night. But I couldn't. Not when my heart was still thudding like it had something to prove. He got up first, heading to the bathroom. I heard the water running, his toothbrush against the sink. I sat up, ran my fingers through my hair, and tried to breathe. When he came back out, towel around his neck, he looked at me with that same familiar softness. "Thanks for letting me stay." "Seriously?" I shrugged. "Anytime." He paused, like he wanted to say more. But he didn't. Just glanced at the clock. "Guess I should get going soon. Don't want to miss this one too." I forced a smile. "Yeah. Of course." We had coffee on the balcony. The morning air was cool, quiet. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the city like he was searching for something. "It's weird," he said suddenly. "I expected this trip to feel more distant. Like we just talk about old times, laugh, and move on. But it doesn't feel that way." I looked at him carefully. "How does it feel?" He hesitated. "Like I'm not ready to leave." That stopped me. My hands tightened around the mug. "You don't have to rush. Stay another day if you want." He looked over, something unreadable in his eyes. "Would that be okay?" I nodded. "Of course." His lips parted slightly, like he was about to say something else, but his phone buzzed. He looked down. "It's my sister. She was gonna pick me up at the station." A pause. "Guess I should tell her I'm staying." He replied to the message, then turned back to me with a smile. "Looks like you're stuck with me." We spent the rest of the day doing nothing and everything. Went for a walk through our old neighborhood. Ate junk food. Watched dumb movies. It felt natural. Effortless. But there were moments, too many, where the air grew heavy again. When our knees touched on the couch and neither of us moved. When our eyes locked too long after a shared laugh. When I caught him watching me, and he didn't look away fast enough. At one point I asked him about his ex. He shrugged. "It wasn't serious. We just didn't fit." Then he turned the question on me. What about you? Any heartbreaks? I gave a half smile. A few. Nothing that stuck. He nodded like he understood. But his next words caught me off guard. Did any of them feel like this? I looked at him, confused. Like what? He dropped his gaze. This comfort. This quiet. My breath hitched. No. Not really. A silence followed. Thick. Loud. We didn't fill it. That night, we didn't even pretend about the couch. He walked into my room without asking. Climbed into bed like it was the most normal thing in the world. But this time, we were closer. Our shoulders touched. Our feet brushed. Neither of us pulled away. He lay on his side, facing me, eyes unreadable. I kept thinking about this. He whispered. About you. My voice barely escaped. What do you mean? He looked like he was trying to figure that out himself. I don't know. Just, when things got quiet in my life, your name always came back. Like a song I couldn't forget. I swallowed hard, heart hammering in my chest. What are you trying to say? He didn't answer. Just reached out slowly, gently. His fingers brushed mine. And I let them stay. His fingers didn't move away from mine. They just stayed there, touching lightly, like he was testing something fragile. I didn't pull back either. I didn't dare. The silence between us thickened, not uncomfortable, but heavy with meaning. I could hear his breathing, feel the slight tremble in his hand. My heart was pounding, screaming for answers I wasn't brave enough to ask. I looked at him, really looked, and in that dim room, he didn't look confused. He looked scared, but not of me. Scared of himself, of the possibility that everything he thought he knew about himself might be shifting. His eyes flicked down to where our fingers met. Then back to mine. I whispered, "Why now?" He blinked slowly, like the question hurt. I don't know. Maybe I've always felt it, but buried it so deep, I forgot it was even there. And being here, with you, it's like it all came flooding back. I didn't know what to say. My chest ached with something between hope and fear. I didn't want to ruin the moment, but I couldn't keep quiet either. Are you saying you like me? His jaw clenched softly. He didn't answer. Instead, he shifted closer, his forehead almost touching mine. I'm saying, I don't want to lie to myself anymore. He didn't kiss me. Not yet. But the space between us disappeared. We lay there, barely touching, wrapped in warmth and tension. I could feel every breath he took, and with every breath, the line between us blurred more. I wanted to hold him. I wanted to protect whatever fragile truth he was uncovering. But I was terrified too. Terrified he'd wake up in the morning and regret everything. He whispered, I don't know what this makes me. I just know I feel safe with you. I reached up and gently touched his cheek. You don't need a label. Just be here. His eyes closed for a moment, like he was finally allowing himself to feel what he'd been hiding for so long. And in that quiet space, our hands finally locked, fingers threading together. The next morning felt different. Not awkward. Not rushed. Just softer. He made coffee while I sat at the table, watching him move around my kitchen like he belonged there. Like this wasn't some temporary reunion but something more permanent. He handed me a mug and sat across from me, our knees brushing under the table. I don't want to leave today, he said plainly. I raised an eyebrow. You're gonna miss another train? He smiled. Maybe. On purpose this time. I laughed, but it was a shaky one. You don't have to force anything. What happened last night, it was a lot. He looked down at his coffee. Yeah. But it felt right. And I'm tired of running from things that feel right. There was a silence again, but this time it was warm, filled with understanding. He reached out and took my hand across the table. Can I stay a little longer? I nodded. Stay as long as you want. That day, we didn't go out. We stayed in, laying on the couch, watching old cartoons, talking about the dumbest things. He opened up in ways I never imagined. Told me about the pressure he felt growing up. How he always played the part of the normal guy because it was easier. How he ignored the moments when he felt drawn to other boys, especially me. You were always different, he said. I didn't know what it meant back then. I just knew that being near you made me feel more myself. I listened, trying not to let tears well up. I had waited years for words like that. I had dreamed of them. But hearing them now, from the boy I once loved and maybe still did, felt unreal. He looked at me with so much vulnerability, it cracked something open in me. I was in love with you, I admitted softly. Back then. I just never said it because I didn't want to lose you. He didn't flinch. I think I loved you too. I just didn't have the courage to see it for what it was. That night, when we went to bed again, it wasn't just about sharing a space. It felt like something had shifted permanently. He lay close, his arm around my waist, his head near my shoulder. It was quiet, but the kind of quiet that speaks louder than words. His fingers drew slow circles on my skin. Is it weird that this feels normal? He whispered. Not weird, I replied. Just overdue. He sighed, content. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know I don't want to go back to pretending. I turned to face him, pressing my forehead to his. Then don't. Just be here. Be real. He nodded, eyes closing. I'm trying. For the first time in a long time. I really am. And in the dark, wrapped in each other, it finally felt like the past had been forgiven, and something new was quietly being born. He stayed. Not just for another day, but the next one too. Every morning, I woke up expecting him to say he was heading back, that this had been a mistake, just a strange emotional detour. But he didn't. Instead, he made breakfast with me, sat beside me on the balcony, shared little jokes that only we understood. And each night, he came back to bed without hesitation. We didn't talk much about labels or explanations. It was like we both knew that putting words to whatever we were building would only complicate it. So we let it grow, quietly, in the shared silence and long glances. Still, there was a part of me that struggled to believe this was real. The boy I had buried in memories, the one I had tried to forget, was now holding me like I was his anchor. And even as I leaned into the closeness, I kept waiting for the cracks to show, for him to pull away. It happened on the 5th day. The atmosphere felt different. He was quieter, distant. He didn't sit next to me during breakfast like he usually did. I didn't push him. I figured maybe he was just tired, or lost in thought. But as the day stretched on, the distance didn't shrink. He checked his phone more than usual. Stepped out to take calls. I tried not to let the worry rise too quickly, but it did. By evening, when I finally asked, "You okay?" he just nodded and muttered, "Yeah, just stuff on my mind." I didn't believe it. And later that night, when he stood at the bedroom door and didn't walk in right away, my heart sank. He finally said, "Do you ever think maybe this is just a bubble?" The question hit like a slap. I sat up slowly. "What do you mean?" He leaned against the frame, looking down. "This apartment. Us. Everything's been so calm, easy. But it's not real life. Out there, things are different." I stared at him, my chest tightening. "Are you saying this isn't real to you?" He quickly shook his head. No. That's not what I mean. He sighed, frustrated with himself. I'm scared that when I leave, I won't know how to carry this. That I'll fall back into who I used to be. And I don't want to lose this. I stood and walked over to him. He looked so lost. I gently reached for his hand. Then don't leave yet. Stay until you know you can hold on to it. He looked up at me, eyes searching mine. And if I can't? I swallowed hard. Then I'll still be here. But don't throw it away because you're scared. He stepped forward then, wrapping his arms around me in a tight embrace. He didn't say anything, but I felt the apology in how tightly he held me, how long he stayed in my arms like he was trying to remind himself that I was real, that this was real. That night in bed, we didn't talk much. But his touch was more desperate, more honest. His hand searched for mine under the blanket, and when our fingers locked, he squeezed hard, like he was afraid I'd disappear. I turned toward him, our noses nearly touching. He whispered, I don't know what I'm doing. I smiled sadly. Me either. But we're doing it together. He leaned in slowly, hesitantly, and kissed me. It was soft, trembling, unsure, but it was real. And I kissed him back like I'd waited my whole life for that moment. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead pressed against mine, he said, I've never kissed a guy before. I smiled. You're doing just fine. The next day, everything felt a little lighter. He was still quiet, still thoughtful, but his touches were more certain. He held my hand when we walked to the store. He leaned his head on my shoulder while we watched a movie. And later, when we lay in bed, he whispered stories from our childhood, stories he hadn't thought about in years. I listened, heart swelling. Somewhere in all those words, I could feel the walls around him slowly crumbling. And in the silence that followed, I realized something else. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't waiting for the goodbye. I was living in the middle of something I never thought I'd have. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Days melted into each other like soft colors blending on a canvas. There was no clear beginning or end anymore, just this warm, quiet rhythm we had fallen into. He started doing small things without asking, like folding my laundry or making tea exactly how I liked it. I would find him humming in the kitchen, barefoot, looking like he belonged to the space. To me. Every now and then, he would stop and glance at me with this look in his eyes, like he was still trying to believe that this was really happening. I caught myself doing the same, wondering how we had gotten here. From running through the streets as kids, chasing ice cream trucks, to falling asleep in each other's arms, tangled in something deeper than comfort. Something real. Something terrifying. But life has a way of knocking just when you start to feel safe. It was early evening when his phone rang. He was chopping vegetables, and I was sitting on the counter, watching him like I always did. He glanced at the screen and froze. I saw his jaw tighten, his eyes flicker. "It's my mom," he said quietly. He stepped into the hallway to answer it, and the second he disappeared, the air in the kitchen changed. I couldn't hear much, just muffled voices, the occasional loud word, his tone shifting between calm and defensive. When he returned, he wasn't holding the knife anymore. He sat down at the table, his face pale. "She's worried," he said, rubbing his hands together. "Thinks something's wrong. Says I sound different." I walked over slowly. "What did you tell her?" He looked up at me, unsure. "That I'm with an old friend. That I needed a break." I sat beside him, heart thudding. "And did she believe you?" He let out a dry laugh. "No. She thinks I'm going through something." A pause. "Maybe I am." We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, "They don't know." About any of this. About me. I nodded slowly. You don't owe them an explanation before you're ready. He shook his head. I don't even know what I'd be explaining. I still don't know what this is. I swallowed hard. Do you regret it? He looked at me sharply. No. Never. That's the scariest part. I don't regret a single second of this. I reached for his hand and held it tightly. Then maybe that's your answer. He exhaled slowly, as if trying to let go of years of expectations, of the weight of being who everyone thought he was supposed to be. But I could see the fear in his eyes still lurking under the surface. Later that night, he didn't climb into bed right away. He sat on the balcony alone, staring out at the city lights. I joined him eventually, wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, and sat beside him. He didn't speak for a while. Then he said, If I tell them, it changes everything. I become someone else in their eyes. I nodded, understanding too well. Or maybe you finally become yourself. He turned to me, eyes wide and sad. But what if they don't want that version of me? My voice was quiet, steady. Then they never really knew you. And that's not your fault. He leaned his head on my shoulder, and we sat like that, letting the city hum around us. He was trembling slightly, not from the cold. I held him tighter. That night, when he finally came to bed, he was quiet. Thoughtful. I could feel him thinking, his body still but mind racing. I didn't push. I just wrapped my arms around him and held him close. After a while, he whispered, Thank you? I asked softly. For what? He paused, then said, For giving me space to be lost. And not running away from it. I kissed the top of his head and whispered, You were never lost to me. He didn't reply. But his fingers laced into mine, holding on like he was finally starting to believe it. And just like that, we drifted into sleep, both of us clinging to the fragile hope that love, even the uncertain kind, might be enough. The next morning felt colder, not because of the weather, but because something unspoken lingered between us. He was quiet again, distant in the way someone gets when their mind is somewhere far away. I didn't ask right away. I let him move through the motions, coffee, brushing his teeth, scrolling through his phone with that blank look. I watched him from the doorway, silently hoping that the stillness between us wasn't the beginning of goodbye. We had built something fragile, something unexplainably precious, and I was terrified it would crack before either of us found the courage to name it. Eventually, he looked up at me. I've been thinking all night, he said. I stepped closer, heart thumping. About what? He put his phone down and leaned back against the table. About telling them. My parents. My sister. I don't know if I can keep pretending I'm okay with the life they expect me to live. I could feel the tension in his voice, the weight behind those words. I walked over, sat beside him. What do you want to tell them? He let out a slow breath. That I'm not who they think I am. That maybe I never was. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with truth. I could feel him inching closer to something important, something that had been buried inside him for far too long. I've been so afraid of disappointing them, he whispered, eyes locked on the floor. Of becoming a stranger to my own family. I placed my hand on his knee, firm but gentle. You don't owe anyone a version of you that feels like a lie. He looked at me then, and for a moment I saw a flicker of that same fear I used to feel, the fear of being seen, really seen, and rejected anyway. What if they don't accept it? What if I lose everything? My heart squeezed. Then you'll still have me. You're not alone in this. His eyes softened. He didn't say anything else, just reached for my hand and held it tightly. Later that day, he went into the bedroom and shut the door. I didn't follow him. I knew he needed space, maybe even the silence to make a decision for himself. I sat on the couch, staring at the muted television, trying not to imagine all the possible outcomes. I wanted to protect him, but this was something I couldn't fix for him. Hours passed. When he finally came out, his face was pale, but his eyes looked clearer. I called them, he said quietly. My breath caught. And? He swallowed hard. I told my sister first. She cried, but not in a bad way. She said she kind of always knew. That she just wanted me to be happy. I smiled, my chest tight with emotion. That's good. He nodded. Yeah. It was better than I expected. I waited, sensing there was more. Then I called my mom. He sat down next to me, his shoulders heavy. It didn't go as well. I felt the ache in his words. What did she say? He stared ahead. She asked if this was a phase? If you had pressured me. She said she didn't recognize me. I reached for his hand again, giving it a small squeeze. I'm so sorry. He looked at me, eyes glassy but not crying. It hurt more than I thought it would. But weirdly, I also feel lighter. Like a chain finally broke. That night, we didn't talk much. We just lay together in bed, facing each other. I could feel the exhaustion in his body, the emotional toll weighing on him. I brushed his hair back gently, and he closed his eyes. Thank you for being here, he whispered. I kissed his forehead softly. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. He tucked himself closer into me, like he was trying to hide from the world, and I held him until he drifted off. As I lay there listening to his steady breathing, I realized something I hadn't let myself feel before. I was falling for him. Not just the boy he used to be, not the fantasy I'd held onto for years, but the real, messy, scared, and brave man beside me. And no matter what happened next, I knew I wouldn't trade this for anything. He woke up before me that morning, already sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it had answers. The sunlight spilled softly into the room, but he looked far away, trapped in thoughts that didn't belong to the peaceful quiet around us. I sat up slowly, watching him, not saying anything right away. His back rose and fell with a deep breath, and then he said, I think I need to go back. My heart didn't break, but it twisted. The kind of twist that happens when you know something is coming and you've tried to prepare for it, but the moment still stings when it arrives. I nodded slowly, swallowing the lump building in my throat. Yeah, okay. He turned to look at me, his eyes tired but clear. Not because I don't want to be here. God, I want to stay more than anything. But I need to face it. My life. My people. I can't just hide in this bubble forever. I nodded again, this time reaching for his hand. I get it. Really, I do. He gripped my fingers tightly. I'm not walking away. I'm just going to figure out how to bring this part of me into the rest of my life. You helped me find it. Now I have to make space for it. We spent the rest of the day not talking about it. Not really. We cooked together, laughed at the same dumb show we always watched, and lay on the couch like nothing was changing. But it was. Every moment felt stretched, a little too quiet around the edges, like we were both trying not to count down the hours. I watched him pack later that evening. He folded his clothes slowly, pausing often, like maybe if he took long enough, the sun wouldn't set. I sat on the bed, knees pulled to my chest, pretending not to ache. He looked up at me halfway through, his voice quiet. Do you regret any of it? I shook my head immediately. Not a single second. He gave me that smile, gentle, sad, but filled with something warm. Me neither. When the time came, I drove him to the station. Neither of us spoke much during the ride. The air was thick with things we weren't ready to say, and maybe didn't need to. When we got there, he turned in his seat to face me fully. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to feel all of this. I gave him a small smile. But you did. He nodded, eyes shining. Yeah. I did. He leaned forward then, pulling me into a hug that was too long and not long enough at the same time. He held on like he was afraid to let go. You changed me, he whispered into my neck. I closed my eyes, holding him just as tightly. You found yourself. I was just here when it happened. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. Promise me this isn't the end. My voice cracked a little. It's not. I don't think it ever could be. He kissed me again. Soft. Slow. Final but not goodbye. When he walked away, I stayed in the car longer than I needed to, watching until he disappeared into the crowd. And even when I could no longer see him, I sat there, hands still on the steering wheel, heart still full of the weight of everything we had been and everything we might still be. That night back at home, the bed felt too big. The silence too loud. But I didn't cry. Not this time. Because something had changed. We weren't those confused kids anymore. We were two people who found something real in a place neither of us expected. And even if the next chapter looked different, I knew the story wasn't over. Not yet. Not even close. Weeks passed. At first, the quiet was unbearable. His toothbrush was still in the holder, his jacket still hanging behind the door, like his presence hadn't fully left. I found myself pausing in the middle of making coffee, expecting him to walk in, barefoot, rubbing his eyes, offering that sleepy grin that made mornings feel softer. But he didn't. The silence in the apartment became a character of its own, always there, always reminding me that something important had shifted. He texted often, short messages at first. Made it home. Thinking about you. Missed the way your bed steals all the blanket. I'd smile at the screen, heart full and aching at the same time. Then the calls came. Longer, warmer. We talked about his family, about how things were slowly unfolding. His mom still didn't get it, still asked careful, indirect questions that circled around the truth without ever landing. But his sister? She had become his rock. She wants to meet you, he said one night, voice soft. She said any guy who makes me sound that happy must be worth it. I laughed through the lump in my throat. She sounds smart. He started sending pictures, snapshots of his room, his dog, even a worn-out sweater he used to wear in high school that I once teased him about. I sent him playlists, old photos, silly videos of myself dancing alone in the kitchen. It wasn't the same, but it was something. He told me about the conversations he was having with himself, the layers he was peeling back. It's weird, he said once. I'm starting to feel like I'm finally meeting myself. And I think I like him. I told him I always had. And every time he said I miss you, I said it back without hesitation. Then one night, the call was different. His voice was steady, clearer than I'd ever heard it. I've told her everything, he said. My mom. She cried. Then she was quiet. And then she hugged me. I didn't think she would. I didn't think she could. I didn't know what to say. My heart swelled so big I thought it might burst. She asked if I was happy, he continued. And I said yes. Because I am. I'm scared, but I'm happy. And I told her about you. My breath caught. Yeah? Yeah. I told her you were the one person who made me feel safe when the whole world didn't make sense. I wiped a tear from my cheek, even though he couldn't see it. So what now? I asked. A pause. Then, now? I think it's time I came back. He arrived a week later. No train this time. Just a knock on my door, and there he was, backpack slung over his shoulder, eyes bright and uncertain all at once. I opened the door, and for a second, we just stared. Like we couldn't believe we were in the same space again. Then he stepped forward and wrapped me in the kind of hug that erased every mile, every second we'd spent apart. "I'm not running anymore," he whispered into my neck. "I want to be with you. Fully. Honestly. Out in the open." I held him tighter, heart racing with a joy I hadn't dared to imagine. "I want that too," I said. "Whatever it looks like. I'm in." We didn't need to start over. We picked up right where we left off, only this time with no more hiding, no more guessing. He introduced me to his sister over video calls. He let me hold his hand in public, even when people stared. We talked about everything, our fears, our dreams, the idea of building something together, slow and real. Some days were hard. Some conversations still left us raw. But the difference was, we were choosing this, choosing each other, every single day. And somewhere between late-night kisses and early morning coffee, I realized something simple and powerful. The boy I once loved had become the man I was falling for all over again. So if you're still listening, still wondering if love can find you even when the odds feel stacked against it, believe me, it can. It may not come in the way you expected. It may arrive late, take detours, stumble through doubt and fear. But when it's real, when it's honest, it stays. It grows. It teaches you that sometimes, the person you've been waiting for has been a part of your story all along. You just had to be ready to see them. And when you do, don't let them go.